How do you respond when your entire world just changed? I'm serious. Think about it for a moment. Weeks ago, you weren't even thinking about social distancing or practicing isolation. Now, how do we network? How do we grow our business? How do we stay connected? Furthermore, how can we be of service during this time? Join our host, Tony Grebmeier, and today's guests as they share their best practices and insights to help you navigate the waters ahead. Welcome to Networking Remote.
Welcome to what I love to call Networking Remote. My name is Tony Grebmeier, and we're doing a series, and we're inviting you into the conversation today. We are joined by some amazing people who are going to step into the conversation and share what's going on in their world. They're people from all around. They're not just local here in Denver. We've got Chandler, who made the transition recently out near Venice. We've got Erik Van Horn joining us from South Dakota. And we have Peter Lynch from Highlands Ranch, a good friend of mine that I met by saying yes to taking my kid one day to lacrosse. And what I'm going to talk about today is really about networking and the things that we can do to support one another during this crisis that we're in, and what we're seeing and how it's affecting us individually, but also our businesses, et cetera. So with an amazing panel today, business leaders and entrepreneurs from all different types of businesses and backgrounds, we're going to share what's working and not working for them in their business. So what I quickly want to do is just say welcome. Thanks for joining us. We're going to post a link to StreamYard.com/Facebook. If you click it, you'll be able to join the conversation today and really interact with us, ask us questions, and we're going to get the panel to give you insight in maybe what they're seeing and how it's affecting them personally and professionally. So as I mentioned, Chandler Bolt is here. He is the CEO of Self-Publishing School, Peter Lynch of Hitch Studios, and Erik Van Horn of I Love Franchising. So we've got some dynamic, well-versed people in connection and networking. So all three of you, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
So first and foremost, what I thought we could do, I can take off my glasses because now I can just look at you and focus. I don't have to read anymore. Is I just want to know how you're doing. Like, right? Like the question gets asked a lot, like, how are you? And the knee-jerk response is, I'm good. And I'm not looking for the knee-jerk response. I'm looking for the one level below that, or maybe two levels below that. That's really just talking about how maybe self-quarantine's been, being a little bit out of your element, and how you're transitioning kind of forward, you and maybe your teams that you're associated with. So I thought I'd start with Erik because he is the most secluded guy I know on the show so far. So this probably isn't that different for him, but I'd love to just get him to go. And then I would go after that to Chandler and then go to Peter.
So how am I doing? This social quarantine stuff is pretty normal for us that live out in the country on 80 acres in South Dakota, don't you know? But yeah, the Minnesotan over there. But I mean, it's been, I remember I was skiing in Park City, the NBA shut down, and I was around some business thought leaders that had been taking measures in their businesses because they were international months earlier. And when I heard them talk about their mindset where they've already been working on things, and here I am just now understanding it when the NBA like closed everything down, I thought, wow, I'm ahead of a lot of people, but I'm behind the real thought leaders and the people that are having to make decisions ahead of most people. And so I left Park City early to get home to start preparing the family and preparing my businesses for what might be to come. And it's really, I planned for worst case scenario, or what I thought was worst case scenario, and which was my businesses were going to shut down, and they did shut down. And I figured they would shut down until July, and it looks like they'll start opening up in June. So go back to that first week, Tony. I was in full on let's shore things up. Let's get as much money out of bank accounts, out of lines of credit, and just preparing for the absolute worst because I did not know it was going to happen. So I spent a week of doing those things. I bought a bunch of supplies, not out of panic, but because I wanted to be productive when supplies were running short for everybody else, and they had to go to the store every day to go get a roll of toilet paper. I didn't want to have to mess with any of that stuff. So I spent a week, like probably in the most panic mode good out of all of this. And then I went into helping people. And in my community of franchisees, I have a Facebook group for franchisees called Franchise Tribe. And I've just been trying to help them out as much as possible. And so it really gave me a sense of what everybody is going through out there. Some people are overly optimistic, not really understanding how it's going to impact them. And some of them just went to deep, dark places right away. So personally, I'm one of those guys that says it's been pretty good. I've been starting to pivot in different parts of my business, and this just helped me pivot a little bit faster. So it was the urge that I needed to be able to do that. From a family standpoint, we got forced into homeschool. It's something that we've been thinking about doing for a couple years, just because I have friends that are entrepreneurs that have the freedom to be able to do things with the family that you don't have when your kids are in school. So it just gave me a time to slow down everything, reflect on how I want my life to look moving forward. So my wife and my family and I and business partners have been doing that. So nothing really dramatic. Nothing really bad. But Tony, last thing with that is I think it's my mindset too. And I'm just not one of those guys that gets really high with the highs or lows with the low. And so I have businesses that are shut down and being impacted financially, but I just think everybody else has got it a lot worse. So I'm okay.
I like it. I appreciate it. Thank you. All right, Chandler.
Yeah. So I'd say overall, I'm pretty fortunate that I run a virtual company. So my team's all around the country and all around the world. We all work from home and have worked from home since inception. So a lot of the things that a lot of people are learning how to do, we've been doing for a long time. So I think as a result of that, I'm doing pretty well overall. I'd say about probably 8.5 out of 10. A few weeks ago, it was definitely worse. And we had a little bit of non-corona dip in business and stuff like that. And maybe you can, it's crazy. I post these monthly goals and then whether or not I hit them and stuff. And I remember at the end of February, kind of posting like, hey, do you ever feel like you're doing all the right things and then just the results aren't showing? and that's where I felt. And it's like, it's always a sign that big things are coming. And I had no idea what was going to happen in March, but that was what ended up happening. And this is kind of kickstarted for us. And I guess maybe the message that would be most helpful for people out of this is like, we've used it. Well, a couple of things. Number one, like we've used this as an opportunity to get back to the basics and the fundamentals. And if your fundamentals are strong, I think you can ride out a lot of this. If you're not a brick and mortar business, like there's just some undeniable, like some brick and mortar businesses are just getting hammered right now. And there's no prep that you could have done for this. There are fundamentals that could help, but like that's tough. So like I do recognize that fortune of I'm running an online business, and now more than ever people have time to write and publish a book. So we've seen sales go up. We've seen a lot of numbers go up. Our content numbers go up because people are at home. But I think the big thing I've been messaging with my team is, our theme for the quarter is back to the basics. So we're, in any business, you should only be doing one of two things: getting new customers or making customers happier. And if it doesn't have to do with one of those two things, then you shouldn't be doing it. And so we've used this as an opportunity to get back to those fundamentals. And my messaging to the team has been, how do we get better because this happened, not in spite of this happening? And so I truly believe that we will be more disciplined. We will be set up way more for success because this happened, not in spite of this happening. And so really looking to how do we use this to narrow our focus and get more discipline?
Hey, I just think, Chandler, what you just talked about, number one, but going back to the post in February talking, I've watched those recap videos. I think, when you put the time and energy and effort into staying the course and doing what that works, sometimes the result doesn't come right when you want it. And that's the hidden genie that it just takes time. You got to keep doing, keep going, and poof, it shows up and you're like, damn, all right, something's working. And I just keep doing that. And I just got to tell you, man, I've watched you for the past several years, had many conversations with you from a guy who, like, I don't know if I should go on stage. I don't know if I go share my message, and poof, you start sharing your message on stages, and then, the whole business kind of shifts and changes. And so I'm really excited for you to be here today. I think it's going to be a great show. I got a lot of transformational people on this show that do different dynamics, but in regards to how these shows we've been using for Networking Remote is we're pulling people from different sectors, not the same so to speak, industry. And we're really trying to dive into the well, dig deep down and find solutions for people, because everybody watching today has a story inside of them. They have some message that they want to go give out to the world. And it may be where you put it on Facebook, that's ideal. Or maybe you say to yourself, man, I've always thought about that book or that children's book. I've been reading to my kids and they're not what I want. So I love that you're here and you're going to give some great insight to a lot of people. And if you've ever thought about starting a franchise or business and you're like, man, I could do better than Tico's Tacos down the road. And if that's a real name, I apologize, but I can do better. And I want to make something. And you know what? You got a great guy here to learn the ins and outs of that industry. And then, up is Peter. And Peter and I, like, first and foremost, just met by pure accident. I really think I was in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing, being a father, taking my kid to go play lacrosse. And we sat on the sidelines and we struck up a conversation. And that is the power of networking. Is I've been able to build many things with Peter, and because of Peter, got a ton of introductions into whole new networks. So from a dynamic father, somebody who I've really gotten to know personally, meet for coffee shops. So Peter, first and foremost, thanks for being here. And I want to welcome you to the show. Talk a little bit about that shift, what you're going through. But I also know from a corporate level, getting back into the corporate world, what you've seen. And I think we should talk about that as well.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Tony. Appreciate you so much, brother. That was one of the best serendipitous moments of my life. So it was great to meet you and connect on that level. So for me, around February, I went from probably my highest to a lot of frustration. So in February, I had two of my biggest speeches I've ever had. Highest paid, biggest speeches. I did Bank of America's national sales meeting for 1,500 people from North America at the Venetian. And then in Austin, I did IMA Financial's national sales meeting. I mean, just was like at the epitome of what I had spent my life building up to, which is getting on these huge stages. And they had boomeranged themselves into other opportunities all throughout the summer, and those now are all gone. So as those started to deteriorate, there was a level of frustration related to that. But then it really quickly, I'm a huge Napoleon Hill fan, and I've always loved his quote where he said, every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. And that's always been like one of the things I've held close to my heart. And so I started to look for seeds, and I started to see, okay, there's stuff that's dead, but where are the seeds? And they started to show up in different areas. So in the last 2 weeks, I've now done 15 virtual speeches in front of thousands of people. I've been written up now by one of a national trade magazine in our entity. I mean, just some amazing things have started. New doors are opening. And so to me, I think it's so important for us to have that mindset of looking for the seeds and finding the opportunities in this difficulty, because there's a lot of difficulty around us. And then the second piece related to our company is Cardinal. So Cardinal is, it was a startup 10 years ago with 4 founders. And this year we're at right now about 1,500 team members. So it's just massive growth. And they were obsessed, as I am, about the future of work, about making work suck less, because the traditional corporate environment is dated and old and it sucks. And so this is an equal passion we have. And what I was just talking with 2 of the founders, and I love this, that this moment in time is going to accelerate us to make that environment better. And so we are now obsessed with finding those seeds within corporate America. And so we're saying when it's time for our team to come back to headquarters and our on-site people to get back in the offices, how is it going to be different? How are we going to make it fun? How are we going to make it something that people want to go back to and are excited to go back to? And so amid all of the frustration and fear and anger initially, because the mindset has changed and I've tuned my RAS to opportunity, now I'm seeing things show up that I didn't even know were on the radar a couple months ago.
No, that's interesting. I got to, both of you guys probably know Cameron Herold. So he wrote the book Meetings Suck. And that was a t-shirt that I wore because I think meetings are so horrible. Like, unless there's context around them, what's the purpose of them? How can we get in and out? I popped into the office yesterday. It was weird because there was only 4 of us on the non-warehouse side. And then on the warehouse side, everybody's 6 feet apart. And I'm looking at everybody and I'm like, I don't know you. I don't know you. I don't know you. Where'd you come from? Like, how long have you been here? And it's just because there's growth. and it's going to really make me step back for a moment and realize I got to shift some of the ways that I connect with people.
Yeah. So, Tony, there was this awesome, so our teams started to create memes to kind of deal with some of the fear and frustration going on. And somebody created one that I loved, and it said, I guess we're going to find out which of those meetings could have been a phone call after all.
True. I wanted to say, thanks for your intros, and we're going to run fast today. We want to kind of talk about it. So Erik, the question for you, because you already live where you live, you do have to jump on a plane to go anywhere fun because you're kind of stuck out there in the middle of nowhere. So we do get a chance to see you a lot here in Denver. You do make this a pit stop for you, or this is where you change planes and go. What have you noticed just in how you're connecting with individuals? Like, how are you just, phone calls, Zooms, FaceTimes, where are you finding your greatest kind of lift for how you're connecting with people?
I've found it easier in a lot of ways because I am remote for the most part, but other people are around. They're not out doing things. They're not, I know, they're not in a meeting somewhere or they might be on a Zoom, but it's easier to reach people, easier to have an instant a connection where you can just hop on Zoom right away, where in the past, everyone's out doing something or traveling somewhere. So I found it incredibly helpful like that. Even with people that are part of the different masterminds that I'm with, I can reach out to them and get them on a podcast now, or I can be on their podcast and do different things like that. Heck, I got Chandler coming on my podcast today, so he's not easy to pin down. So there are I found it really beneficial for someone like myself, just knowing that there are other people out there that do have the time. And then I've just made it a priority just to reach out to a handful of people every day just to check in. Hey, how you doing? Just to strike up some conversation. And so that's one of the things that I've been doing.
I'll echo that. I just relaunched the Self-Publishing School podcast, and I've gotten people I would have never imagined to say yes, just because I'm like, hey, let's make it happen in the next week. We both have time. 45 minutes, let's do it. And it's we just got Robert Kiyosaki committed on the podcast, bunch of other people that I'm like, I would have never thought, because it freed up those folks who were speaking are now going online. And then also for the flip side, carving out I'm making the time to do more podcast interviews. So I've got 11 podcast interviews today. And because it's hey, change, pivot, change with the times and what's happening.
Yeah, go ahead. You can answer the question. You were going to come on my podcast, and I'm like, well, why don't I bring you on a cool panel? Let's get more connection, and then I can always find the time with you to record another solo show. That's what I love, is people are finding the opportunities and moving just slightly one way or the other, not picking up their foot and traveling too far, just pivoting. And I think that's so important for us as business owners to see the well. That was one of the posts that I did this morning. It says, start digging the well before you need it. Start seeing the opportunity. So question just about bringing your self-publishing, podcast back. What was the reason for it? Because you had the time, or you knew that there was a need in the market and you go, hey, let's go do something great?
Yeah, it was a little bit of both. And so we had the podcast, and then I just checked. It was probably 2 months ago. And within 24 hours, our last 2 sales had come from the podcast, and we hadn't published an episode since 2018. So, it was I think it was $10,000 in sales in a 24-hour period came from the podcast. And I was just like, what in the world? I didn't even know people still listen to that. And so I just logged into the stats, and I'm like, wow, okay, this thing's getting thousands of downloads a month. And then thinking through our bread and butter is writing and publishing a book and using that book to help grow your business. So it's okay, the type of people that are doing that, what are they doing? They're listening to podcasts. So it just kind of all connected. And it's if we want to own this mind share in this world, we got to go where the market is. And obviously the market is already voting with their wallet. They're already listening to the podcast. They're already, decided to do business with us. So just leaning into that. So that was really it. And then 2 birds, 1 stone, kind of, all right, well, there is this quarantine. So how do I use that to get people who wouldn't usually say yes because they now have time? How do I use that to get commitments with high quality guests?
Yeah, I think it's fascinating too. And then for you, because you've been virtual and remote for so long, how's your connection time with people then? Has it been quicker because you got so many more opportunities? Or do you still find the time for that intentional, hey, have a cup of coffee or water, let's just meet virtually and just have a conversation? How's that been for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, outside of my team, which for me, it's my family, top 10 friends or so in my life, my team, and everyone else kind of like, and I just had to do that at a certain point. And I think it's, yeah, I don't know. Every year I when I do my personal goal setting, I do like my top 25 people in my life, because for me, I just would fall in these habits of just horrible communication patterns. It's like the running joke would be like, cool, yeah, text Chandler, good luck. Maybe you'll get a text back like 3 weeks later. And so I just had to, but it was also driving me crazy because I feel bad, like with every interaction that comes in that I can't respond to, it's like just this building, like I'm letting people down. And so I think that helped with that. But outside of my team, I'd say it's definitely going down. Because it's like there's not so much in person. So it's probably deeper connection with fewer people, which may or may not be a bad thing. I mean, I think it's causing people to FaceTime more, to actually be at home with their kids, to be intentional with the people that they love. And so I've seen that. And then it's hurt a little bit because we had an in-person leadership offsite that we had to cancel, which that's, just like we got new people on the leadership team. It's just like super important to build those relationships. So that kind of sucked because I wanted this to be like a really intentional, like team building time, but we already had a virtual offsite with the team. So that was good. And we just pivoted a couple of things there to be more connection oriented, more vulnerability oriented. And one of the questions that we asked that might be helpful for others is, we're doing our planning for the quarters. Like, what's the one thing that you're most worried about over the next 90 days? And it just got real deep, real fast. And I think the connections for the team, I mean, just to be able to hear what people are going through. So we've pivoted a couple of things, like almost not super related, but like changing one-on-one rhythms and, just stuff like that to make sure that we're as a leadership team are serving the people on our team and setting them up for success.
Chandler, I appreciate you going there because I think it's so powerful too. And Peter's going to be able to dive right into this. It's so important that, we rise up now because the teams and everybody needs leadership, right? They need to follow somebody, and you better know where you're going. Otherwise they're going to be sitting there going, oh, which direction are we headed? And
Yes.
So great to have you guys on here, all different views, but the same kind of message is, how to lead your people, lead your teams, and to do, like, I love what Erik's doing. We were chatting the other day, both ride Pelotons. We're both doing 75 hard. We're both connecting and communicating more. He's like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. And I'm like, let's talk it out. Erik's super busy. I'm super busy. We normally don't get that kind of 45 minutes of uninterrupted, just brainstorming time. So I really think this is a time where you need to go mastermind, even if it's remote with 5 or 6 people. I'm so grateful to Nick, who lives in our neighborhood, who threw out just a hand and say, hey, every Thursday at like 2:00, let's all jump on a mastermind. There's 7 or 8 guys and we're masterminding. We're just in the neighborhood. And some of us have never met face to face, but we've done it for 5 weeks now in a row, and you're getting so much consistency out of it. And that's where these great seeds that Peter was talking about are starting to hold ground and actually start growing. And then our job is to water it, throw up some prayers, and, tend to the storms that are coming. And how do we protect ourselves? So we are seeing, and that's why I love, Chandler, where you went with this. I mean, I want to talk about the person who has that idea in their head about a book. I want to talk about the idea of the person who thinks about a business idea for launching a restaurant or a gym or whatever, because we're not in this forever. We are in our ship going in a direction. We will not always be on our ship. We will get off and we'll go back to dry land. And we're like, reality has shifted and changed, but we have forever changed. And that's the most important message. So how do we grow from this point moving forward? Peter?
Yeah, I mean, just such an awesome thing. So for me, there's 2 really things that I'm focused on. I quote Jim Rohn, success is the natural consequence of consistently applying basic fundamentals. I mean, it's simple, right? And so for me, when I'm running full speed, I tend to double down on my strengths. And so in this moment, I made a conscious decision to say, I'm going to really double down on a weakness, which for me was my health. December 15th, I'd started working out and getting in a little better shape, but I kicked it into another gear in this phase, and I'm down 31 pounds now. I'm feeling great. I'm able to apply some fundamental strength building, which I know is going to make me just accelerate out of this faster. The second piece is the importance and the power of people-centered leadership. It's easy to be a leader that dictates and yells and does whatever when things are going well. But right now, what people and teams need more than anything is authentic people-centered leadership. And it looks like this. It's so for our 1,500 team members, our on-site, we closed our HQ down because the governor told us we had to. Then our on-site teams felt like we were leaving them behind. And they had some really harsh things to say about us. And so we put out a survey that said, what are your questions? We're going to do a live stream and answer these questions. And the questions that rose to the top were, you suck. Now, these are not questions as a leader that you want to answer, but I know that to be a people-centered leader, I have to help alleviate fears that they have. And this is birthed in fear. So we took those questions head on. We said, I totally understand this. I get this. You know what? Some of the things we did in the last 3 days did suck. It was horrible leadership. I'm sorry. Here's what we're doing to move forward. And in that moment, we transitioned our teams from this antagonizing, we don't like what you're doing, to being behind and how can we help? I mean, we had team members that were saying, I'll sacrifice salary, I'll sacrifice bonus. What can I do to help this company? So I think what teams and companies and organizations need now more than ever are leaders that are 100% focused on people. And the companies and the entrepreneurs and the leaders that do that are going to accelerate out of this crisis faster than everyone else.
Peter, that is simple and hard to do for a lot of people, right? It's simple advice, right? Love on your people, encourage them, lift them up. Out of this, just at our company, ShipOffers, we've been able to prove to ourselves we could build a remote team. Now, we can't build a remote fulfillment crew, but we can do the other side. And we've been able to overcome a lot of obstacles and challenges. And I give huge kudos to the VPs of all their departments been able to manage. But I've also been able to see how, for myself and Doug, we've been able to step back, not from leadership, but driving leadership deeper and letting the team rise up with new leaders and showing that it's possible. Because I was always like, no, you got to come to the office 5 days a week, blood, sweat, and tears every day. Come on. And the team has proven, hey, you know what? We can do this. My question, Chandler, productivity, because you've run for so long virtual since you kind of got started, are you watching and seeing your people even working harder now because there's more opportunity around, as you sort of say, like there's just more opportunity, right? My wife sits sometimes and we'll walk by and she's like, hi. And I'm like, hey, I'm still working. And I'm watching her. She's finding new things that she's doing because she has more time, because she doesn't have to worry about when I'm coming home. I'm already home. So she can be busy doing other things and know that, hey, it's great. So I'm curious for you, have you noticed an uptick like in your team's productivity across the board now that, hey, we're all kind of in the same boat, right? You can't jump on a plane. You can't go on a bus. I don't even know if Uber's working. I don't even know if you can call a ride, like there's a lot of things I just don't know because I haven't needed it. I haven't gone anywhere. So question for you.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's going to be a little bit of a double-edged sword because when you work from home and you're quarantined, like the lines between work and home get really blurry. And that's something I'm super passionate about, is like, how do you set good boundaries with friends, family, et cetera? But then also, how do you make sure that when you're on, and when you're off? Because I think some of what is probably happening, both for my team and for teams in general, is just not sustainable. Because we have so much opportunity. And there's so much going on that it's like, yes, people are definitely working more across the board. And I'd say there's probably 10 or 20% of that that's not sustainable after. So it'll be interesting to see if the pendulum swings back the other way, or what happens when it goes back to normal. Because I think there is that. So I've got this video I've got the 7-Figure Principles YouTube channel and podcast, and it's about a lot of operational principles for scaling a company. And I've seen views on my how to work from home video go through the roof. I mean, it's crazy. But one of those is like putting on work clothes and taking off work clothes, and like little things like that. Then when you work from home, I think make a big difference for your mindset and for your mentality. So it'd be interesting to see the shift post all this stuff happening. And I love what Peter's saying, because I really think it is this balance, right? It's this balance between like, how do you make sure you're people first leadership, and also like preparing the team for what might happen, which I think that's been the interesting dichotomy of like, I think there's a really great opportunity to bring people together. And then we've tried to, like, we've also had to make like some tough decisions, and not crazy tough decisions yet. But like, I think one of the most important things is just clear communication. And so up front, like I was like, hey, here's the deal. Like we need to get lean. We've, even over the last month, we've cut about $5,800 in non-people expenses. So it's like, we're going to cut as much non-people expenses as we can so that we don't have to cut people. And right now, as it stands today, like if I was just looking at the numbers, we would have to let 1 or 2 people go. And I was just like super clear about that with my team. And so like, let's rally around this. Let's come together in this. And I think, that's been what's happened. And then I think it's an opportunity, like I was saying earlier, to narrow the focus. And then I got my eye on kind of like re-establishing the norm, because that'll be interesting to see what happens.
Thank you, Erik.
You're muted, Erik.
I just love watching people to go through that motion for a moment.
It was really good. Like what I said was really good right there. So I've seen my team, I guess, and I've got different teams, but the retail-based team where they have where we had to let people go, I saw them struggle with concern of what the public was thinking about things, and what the staff was thinking about things. And they were wanting to make emotional decisions, where I was wanting to make strategic decisions. And I didn't know what the right decision was, and that's, so I had to,
nobody does.
I know. And that's the thing. They wanted to be right, and I was okay being wrong. And we knew that we were going to make some wrong decisions through the process. And I saw some other brands that made some strategically wrong decisions that really hurt many of their franchisees and many of their customers. So I wanted them to feel okay being wrong. And that's kind of my thing with the team that I have, is I want them to be okay making small wrong decisions, and so they get used to making decisions, because so many people out there just cannot make decisions. So when I'm helping people with leadership, it's really helping them make these micro decisions. So the more micro decisions that they make right, then I trust them with the bigger decisions. And then from, going back to kind of that productivity thing, I found at home, it got really easy to start working a lot, and I wasn't leading my family well. And, if I'm not able to lead my family well, but I'm able to lead my teams well, then something's out of balance or out of whack. And so I had to just make a conscious decisions to pull back on always trying to give to other people, and make sure that I'm giving to my family and leading my family.
Strong wisdom you have.
We never mind.
That's so good, Tony. So for me, it was a couple things. One was I started to notice my teams having decision fatigue, because when you think about it, when they're working from home, it's hard for them to say, I need to take a day off, because in their minds, they're like, well, I'm already at home. And so I noticed this decision fatigue. So last week, I actually sent a note out to my entire team and said, I need you to each give me 2 days over the next 2 weeks where you're going to not look at email, not answer email. You're going to focus on your family. You're going to focus on whatever else. But you got to remove that fatigue so that you get back strong. That was one piece. The other piece is based on a story I remember from my grandpa. He's my all-time favorite person. I was 12 years old. I was bucking hay in the middle of a field in the middle of the summer, hottest day, hardest work in the world. And I was working my tail off to impress him. And then I saw him look across the field at me, and I knew this was the moment he was going to say something awesome about me. And he looked across the field and he yelled, "Hey, idiot." He said, "Stop taking the hay to the truck. We take the truck to the hay." It was such a brilliant and beautiful lesson in the importance of you should work hard, but you should also work smart. So we were so caught up in this trial of hustling and working hard and being fast that we had forgot some of the elements of smart work. So I really challenged my team to say, what's some of the smartest things we can do right now to bring the truck to the hay?
I'm not going to call you, hey, idiot, but I could only imagine what you're thinking. Because in my head, I'm thinking, man, he's going to say something really, really nice about me. And all I'm thinking is, get back to work, kid. What are you stopping waiting for me to tell you something, right? Like, that's all I could think of. So, no, I got to tell you, I love where we're going today. So some of the shift that I'm going to bring to the conversation is now productivity for you personally. Maybe are you having an uptick or a downtick? But also, what are you reading? What are you working on project-wise? These are just some random thoughts. And then at the very end of the show, for the last 10 minutes, so we are going to get to where you each have like 3 minutes, and I'm writing and taking notes from things that I'm hearing today, and you're going to rapid fire back some questions and let you have your closing thoughts. So think of it as a great debate, but we're not debating anything. We're just having a nice conversation. So Chandler, some of the things I really want to know, now that you got the podcast, what other things are you working on? I know that the book that you wrote, the stages you're speaking on, they've all made such an impact in you. But I've been watching you for a while. It isn't just like last week I started, hey, who's this Chandler guy? I love what you were talking about. The payoff from 2018, you stopped it. And all of a sudden you realized, man, my last 2 sales came in from a podcast. Peter was talking about planting seeds. Now you're tending back to that garden again. So what are some of the things that you're seeing that you think you can carry way after you get back to somewhat of a new way of living?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, some of the things we're working on is, so obviously Self-Publishing School podcast, just relaunched that. I'm still rolling out 7-Figure Principles podcast that just launched 2 months ago. And so really just like adding value, to speak to what Erik was saying earlier, like adding value as much as possible. And so now we've got podcasts coming out 3 days a week. And so it's like, we're in that rhythm, and then adding group coaching calls and resources for our students. So that, and we've got like a shelter at, I think it's like shelter at home challenge happening right now, 30-day challenge of like, I think on the first day, there was 100,000 words written. So just like really leaning into it with our community is like, hey, how can we support you? How can we help you use this time to get your book done? And then just plant seeds for the future. So we gave away 50,000 copies of my book published. Or sorry, not 50,000 copies, $50,000 worth of copies. I think we're up to about maybe like 1,500 copies given away so far. And that's been super helpful. And, we're fulfilling on a bunch of that stuff. And then a bunch of those people have actually signed up for self-publishing school. So it's kind of been a win-win. We're giving all these copies away saying, hey, use this, read this to get your book done during quarantine. Cause it's, you probably heard this by now, but it's like, Isaac Newton discovered calculus and the fundamentals of gravity in quarantine. Shakespeare wrote some of his best work, King Lear and Macbeth in quarantine. So like we're leaning into that, and then just building out new products. So that's kind of we're doing more PR and speaking stuff. So it's like PR and speaking for authors. So media, press, podcasts, like helping our people. How do you use that to sell more books, to grow your business, stuff like that. So that's a bunch. And then to answer a couple other questions that you mentioned, like, what am I reading? Not the news. I personally am looking daily at just the government website of like number of coronavirus cases. What are the stats? Like, what are the actual stats? And then what percentage of people are dying? What are the stats there? What percentage of people had pre-existing conditions? It's a huge amount. And just like straight from the source there, pretty much not anything else. And then just reading, I'm reading a really great book right now, John C. Maxwell, Good Leaders Ask Great Questions, listening to Multipliers by Liz Wiseman, who I think that's a top 5 leadership book of all time for me. And productivity, I think, was your third question. It's went way up for me. It'll be interesting to see the sustainability. I work pretty hard in general, but it's going to be interesting to see. I'm definitely going to need to, I think, plan a long weekend or a couple of days off here in a few weeks, just to recalibrate and not burn out.
I like it. Hey, I had this thought on my walk this morning. I got up and one of my childhood best friends lives in my neighborhood. Actually, 2 of my childhood best friends live in my neighborhood. They moved from Santa Cruz here. But I'm walking and I'm thinking to myself, how the census has been putting out questions or telling you get all your stuff filled out on Facebook. how come there isn't something like that to the masses saying, have you been affected? Do you know somebody who has? And start asking questions. And I kind of think the numbers, because people who have it haven't been able to get tested, but maybe you've had the symptoms. And I'd love to figure out the real skew of numbers, because I think data is so impacted so fast, and people would be willing, like, hey, I'll take a quick test and just get the data, because I think it's so right there in front of us. There's a 17-year-old kid. I watched this news article, who was basically the first person to take all of the input of what was going on way before we even knew about COVID, and started getting all of the data together and built a website he was 17 years old. And so there's a lot of smart people out there helping and finding ways to bring data together. 3 sharp people right here know that we have people on our teams that help us to bring the data together, but the data is so important to, growing our business, but also people that are impacted. So just a random thought, but I was out on my walk thinking this morning, why aren't we using the technology that we have at our fingertips to get us better numbers? Peter?
Yeah, just so many. Sorry, so many great things. I'm taking notes on some of the things I'm going to start to do myself. Erik and Chandler, awesome stuff. For me, it's really been about staying connected with a team in a different environment, driving that connection. We did something really cool that my team half my team emailed me and said it's the best thing that we've done. So I sent them an email the day before. We have a weekly Zoom happy hour. But I said, on this happy hour, what we're going to do is we're going to have a safe for work. Don't take this wrong with the term, but an adult show and tell. And so bring something from your house that describes a little bit about who you are. Man, it was powerful. I mean, I feel like I know my team better after that by far than I did before. So that was some cool activity. So it's about deepening the relationship with my teams. For me, about what am I learning and what am I doing? I'm digging into Ryan Holiday's book, Stillness is the Key. I'm reading James Clear book, Atomic Habits. These 2 books are just great books right now for what we're going through and focusing on the basics. I launched an Instagram TV series that had the highest engagement of any social thing I've done around storytelling. So it's the Storyteller's Handbook. And I'll be doing that about 3-4 times a week. So I'm creating content around the core of my message, which is awesome. And then for productivity, my biggest thing, again, was to focus and to create some focused time where I don't let anything work related distract me. So that if that's, I'm going to have dinner this week and we're sitting down and I don't have my phone by me, my computer by me, I don't hear the dings of an email, I gotta separate myself, because as I think it was Erik that said, everything we do now is in our home. And so to create those delineations, and Chandler, I think you said the idea of changing your clothes. I love that idea. I'm going to take that one and do that too. So I think these are really important to staying productive, because out of the gate, we were like a racehorse and we were running. But there will come a time soon when we're going to be exhausted if we keep that pace.
Yeah, you can't drive 150 forever, right? You have to find some normalcy to pull over to the road for a moment. I'm so glad you're going to change your clothes. I think it's super important. I cannot believe it's been 5 weeks you've been wearing the same thing. All right, Erik.
Man, I'm glad my work attire are like shorts and a t-shirt. So I'm glad that doesn't have to change, Chandler. What I've been working on is I started this franchisee mastermind. So I didn't have any type of coaching, any mastermind type thing that I've ever done, but I've always wanted to do it. And one day I just said, I'm just going to do it. And I launched it, low ticket, worked with Tony. Tony helped me through a lot of that stuff and launched it. And my goal was to get a certain number. And I had a number of people say yes to it. And then about 24 hours ago, I put it live, and then I got the number that I needed. So that's just the start. And so that was, and then that came, out of, starting this Facebook group and getting really active in there. So I just really went into and have been helping a lot of people through this time. And that's been a lot of fun. Also, helping these other people just have a lot of time on their hands, obviously right now. They're business owners, and now they're starting to think about franchising their businesses. So I've been working with different companies that are thinking about franchising their businesses, whether it's, gym, fitness, HVAC, all kinds of different ones. So helping them and seeing if it really makes sense for them to franchise it or not to franchise it. So just giving some really good advice to people that's really non-biased. And it's hard to get non-biased advice out there because, I don't think everyone should be franchising. So that's what I've really been working on. The other thing with that, I put some posts out there on social media about franchise resales, and that's getting a lot of engagement. And right now, unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of franchises and just normal brick and mortar businesses that the owners are going to struggle, whether it's real financial struggle because some of them opened up too many in the last short bit of time where they are struggling with cash flow because of their expansion strategy. And other people are just plain worn out. They don't want to keep going through it. And this is just the process that, business is going to be going through. And so I'd like to connect people together, those that are wanting to get out for whatever reason, and the people that are looking for a deal. So I've been working on all of that. What I've been learning, I've been reading a book called The Weekly Coaching Conversation. It's just kind of a fable.
Great book.
Chandler, I probably got it from you on one of these calls that you and I are on. And so, yeah,
also
it's
top 5 leadership books of all time.
Well, then of course I got it from you, man. So, so anytime I hear someone like Chandler say, top whatever, I just go to Amazon and grab it. So that's been a really fun one. It's a fun one to read. So I've just been dealing with that. And then
real quick, can I get a list of all of your guys who recently pushed out books? Just recommend them. He's going to go buy them all right now for you. So these people are going to have a big, huge uptick in sales today. Thanks to Erik.
The other thing that I've been doing to learn through this time is inviting people on my podcast that I really want to learn from on the podcast. And then, if you have podcasts, there's things that you learn outside of the actual recording of the podcast that you get to ask questions that don't get published. And so I had a guy that was the CIA station chief in Pakistan, and second in line to become the CIA director. Now he's in the private sector, still advising the government. And so I wanted to get somebody like him on the podcast to give advice on decision making and what, where to get your resources to learn what to learn from, what not to, and then having private conversations with someone like that, because that's helpful for me as I'm making long-term decisions in business, not knowing what things are going to look like. So I want to go to sources like that are kind of just really unique. So I've been doing that. Productivity, man. Thanks, Tony. 75 hard. I did that challenge last summer, and I was telling my wife it was the best thing all summer long that I did. I've never felt that good mentally and physically. And so Tony put out a post that you were going to start 75 hard, and I'm in. So, but that is just going for these walks or exercising early in the morning has just cleared my mind and has made me a lot more productive. And then I'm thinking, why am I not blocking out more time just to think and be productive? So started to do that. And then one last thing is just Chandler is very good at this. I love to chase squirrels, but focus, getting one thing. So I sent my main man, Michael, who does a lot of projects with me. I'm like, Michael, good news for you. We're going to focus on one project at a time until it's done. And then we'll go on to the next project. And I said, and you can hold me accountable to it. Mostly. So yeah, it's been focus, and we all know it, but I struggle with that at times a lot.
Will you just share for just a couple of minutes so people watching kind of know a little bit of the background of the types of franchises that you've been a part of? You can maybe omit some names, maybe the industries.
Yeah. So I first got started when I was in my 20s, and it was in the tax industry. I knew nothing about taxes. I realized that was a marketing business. The better that you were at marketing, the better that you were in that business, because you could hire the people to do the taxes. And so that's where I cut my teeth. I also bought what's called an area development, regional development. So I bought the region in Austin, Texas. And so I was kind of like a sub-franchisor. I was responsible for selling franchises in that region and supporting them, coaching them. So I bought it when I had 4 franchisees, and I sold it about 10 years later when I had over 40 franchise locations in there. So I grew with that franchise, and I learned I was young, and I learned how to lead people that were a lot older than me when I didn't have the experience. So that was then I had about 10 years in that brand. I had an exit that was a really good exit, and then the last 10 years I've gone from that one brand to owning 6 different brands, 3 different regional developments, a lot of different locations in the health sector, in the beauty sector, and in the fitness sector. And so currently those are the franchises that I own. As a franchisor, I am starting a roofing franchise. So it's roofing, siding, and gutters. And I'm working on a handful of others right now as well. And with all of that, I'm partnering. I've learned what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. So I'm partnering with the people that are good and like as a CEO, CMO, and because I'm not going to be the guy that's going to operationally run all of these things.
I love it. It's like I got Marcus Lemonis on my show today. I like it.
Here's one thing. So I was on a conference call the other day with a team that I'm working on buying out this other franchise. And they said, like, what do we all want to do? And I said, I told them exactly like my wish list, which Chandler heard this the other day. It's basically, I want to do none of the work, get all of the reward, and, and advise here and there. And they're like, Erik, thanks for being super honest. You're always super honest. But then they went in and basically said, that's what we want you to do. That's you're bringing all of the pieces to the table. You're the one that's putting the deal together, and you're the one that's connected out there to bring the right people at the right time. So one of them said, I'll be the CEO. One of the other ones said, I'll be the COO, and we'll make this work. Erik, we know that you want to go on to do other things, and that's fine with us. And so it was just a real kind of lesson for me to take a step back and vocalize what I really want. And if I had to sum up this season for me of being in quarantine, it's being very vocal on what I want, what makes me happy. So that's the filter that I'm running everything through. What am I good at? And does it bring me joy? Am I happy doing it? Does it energize me? If it's a yes for those, then I'm going to move forward on it. If it's not, then I just don't want to do it.
Intentional. I love that. All right.
Hey,
Peter.
by the way, you should talk to my dad. He's in the gutter helmet, gutters, vinyl, siding, all that business.
Let's do it, man.
Wow.
I'd love that.
Working on the show. I like it. I think, Peter, you were up last, and then unless you've already gone, my brain is like,
yeah, I've gone, but that's all right. The last thing I'll say is now this second time or third time somebody's mentioned 75 hard, so I'm jumping into that today too. So
you got to join the A team. That's all I'll tell you.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, so what we're going to do, rapid fire these off. I invite you to take a piece of paper and just personally make your notes really, really quick. I actually found 7 instead of 6. So figure out how to grab 3, share off of those. You probably have already shared a little bit off of some of it, but I want you to kind of just maybe elaborate a little bit more, tie in a little bit about your business, because I love giving shout outs and plugs. It's important to let people know you're giving your time. I want to get something for you personally, because you're loving on everybody watching right now. And then we'll watch on the replay. We're streaming in like 5 different locations. So these are the words that came back. Planting seeds today. Adding value. Leadership. I'm stealing the word from Chandler's sign because I think it's still the best. Impact. Like, how do you make an impact today, tomorrow, and always? Productivity. Zoom happy hour, but for adults. I thought that was really, really key. And then being intentional and really saying what it is that you want, not hiding behind I'm going to say it, but you know what? I don't think I can do that because everybody's going to look at me like I'm doing something crazy. And I really like what this show has really encompassed today. And I think we've dug into some really deep roots and foundation for people. And I want you at the very end, as I just kind of say thank you to you, just to know that deep down inside, what you guys have done today is what Chandler is re-seeing the idea, and what I love about Erik, the importance of podcasting. It's someone's going to get this message and it's going to change their world. Someone's going to hear something today and you're going to get them out of a funk. You're going to have your message be heard, and someone's going to be like, you know what? I haven't been thinking smart. I'm so glad Erik talked to me, because you know what? I now have some resources and guides. I've always wanted to write a book. I've always wanted to get on stages and share my message. That's the impact of bringing people dynamically together, is that you don't know necessarily in this moment what the impact is, but I will tell you, it's like Chandler said, I stopped in 2018 and the last 2 sales came from our podcast, right? And it's the work you're planning today that if you keep planting and never stop, man, the harvest is going to be plentiful. So let's kick this off today. We'll go Erik, Chandler, and we'll wrap up with Peter. Pick from the 7 list and have fun. Try to pick 3 and go.
Pick 3. I didn't know I was supposed to pick 3. What am I supposed to say about him, Tony?
You incorporate whatever you feel. Okay. How you resonated best with the message.
The adding value, that's been the biggest thing for me. How can I add value to everybody that I'm coming into contact with, and teaching other people how to add value themselves. So I've started to learn that a lot more over the last 3 years as I've gotten into the world of masterminds and being connected with people like you all. And so, but I have not really taught other people how to do the same. And I had Travis Chappell on the phone, on the podcast last night, and he's really good at networking and things like that. And so I think all of us out there, we struggle at times with what value do I really have to add? I know at least I struggled with that at times, especially when I get into rooms with people that are much more successful than me. And I purposely put myself in those rooms because I want to be uncomfortable. Anytime I get comfortable in the network or the rooms that I'm in, I know that I need to push myself more. And so I continually do that, and I start to realize the actual value that I can add to other people. So I'm just really on a mission right now to help other people see the value that they can add to other people, and that helps them expand their network as they're doing that as well. So adding value was a big one for me.
I love that, man. Hey, Erik, I want to tell you, it's if one thing I've gotten out of this on top of all of the other things is I get to build closer friendships with people that I really do enjoy. From our very first time of having a chance meeting in Mexico and Puerto Vallarta, sitting at a table, didn't know you, but someone, Aaron Stokes, is coming up on our next show, said, hey, you just got to come to dinner, sit down beside this guy, have some fun, and just listen. And just want to say it's incredible to watch your journey, your transformation of really kind of finding your voice, and then seeing the platforms that you've been able to create to really go impact the world. So thank you very much for doing that. Chandler?
Yeah, a couple I'd really key in on is leadership, adding value, and then maybe Zoom. And the Zoom one is just the Zoom happy hour. Our sales team especially has been doing this, and they call it it's Friday Zoomies, and it's like end of day on Friday, and that's just been fun for them. They've been loving that. So I love that you said that, Peter. And then really leadership and adding value. It's been the constant reminders. Is like, put customers and people at the front of your business, and how can we just add more value in every interaction? And that's what I've been trying to focus for myself, because I think it's what you get in business for. And then somewhere along the way, or at least for me, you get distracted by all the other stuff, and you forget that that reminded my people like, hey, the customers are why we all have jobs, and they pay all of our paychecks. So they need to be at the front of the business. And so adding value in every interaction and touch point. And then leadership. Right now in tough times, this is when leaders lead. And this is what I told my leadership team a few weeks ago is, guys, this is when we get to earn our paychecks. It's not when it's easy, but when it's difficult. And anybody can be a leader when it's easy. It's not that hard because things are going up and to the right. There's no adversity, things like that. But I think just really taking this time this is why for me, it's like, I'm obsessed with leadership, and you've heard me mention a bunch of books. Like, it's just, all right, how do we sharpen the axe or sharpen the saw? And how do I do that continuously? And then pour into my leadership team, pour in the people on my team.
Thank you very much. And, talk for just a minute about your school and a couple people on Facebook mentioned, like, I need to write a book. Like, let's talk about that for just a couple of minutes. Like the importance of taking your thoughts out of your head, get them down on paper, and then how do people get connected with you personally so that, your team can get to work and maybe see if it's a good fit?
Yeah. I'm biased, but I think writing a book is the best thing that you can do to grow your business and talk about adding value and planting seeds for your future. It's a book goes out and spreads a methodology, and then people come back and want to do business with you. So we've got a bunch of helpful tools. If you pretty much Google anything about writing a book, you're going to end up on either Self-Publishing School, which is our main site, or selfpublishing.com, which is another site that we have. So there's a bunch of tools. We have book outline template generators. So like 25 page Google Doc that you can literally just copy and paste. And that's an outline that you can just start typing in. Like my book published, we're giving away a bunch of copies for free on the website right now. I think we've still got about 1,000 copies of those left. So just like so many resources and tools to help people get started.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming. And I know you got a busy day. That's what I love. You find people who are busy, you give them something else and they say yes. And then we're going to go make them even more busier by, I think you said you had 11 podcasts today. Damn, that's awesome. All right, Peter, wrap us up and take us home. Give us all the words of wisdom we need to live for the rest of our day. We're going to eat right now.
First off, Erik and Chandler, so great to get a chance to meet you guys. But the two words that stood out to me, number one is leadership. It's always been one of my favorite bumper stickers I ever saw. And it said, I want to be the kind of person that my dog thinks I am. And my goal right now is to be that kind of a leader. I'm at home spending a ton of time with my dogs and they're just freaking awesome. I mean, everything they do is spectacular. So it's like, I want to be that kind of a leader. And I think the path to that is based in a story I heard from the CEO of L'Oreal. They said the reason they were so great is because they had the three loves. They loved what they did, they loved who they did it with, and they loved who they did it for. So that's the kind of leader I want to be. I want to be a leader who lives those three loves. And then really related to the impact and adding value, I just got done this morning speaking at a Thought Leadership Summit. And I was sharing with people about the power of storytelling and that they needed to find a way to tell their story. And that most people are trying to sound like everyone else. And when you do that, you end up sounding like nobody. And I already have people email me and say, I feel like this is a real pivot point for me in telling my story. So I want to add value. I want people to leave and be changed because of what I've done.
I love it. How do people find out more about you and what you're up to?
You can go to peteralynch.com. That's my speaking website. Also on social media, typically at Real Peter Lynch, because the Fidelity guy has taken everything else Peter Lynch. So,
but I like it because if you watch the movie that came out about the A-Team, which Erik, he's about to join, about Lynch. So we need a Lynch in our group to really pull the whole A-Team together.
Awesome.
I want to say thanks. Chandler had a Bolt. I knew that he already needed to leave because that was a timing issue. When you're doing a lot of podcasts, it's all timing. But hey, we're going to wrap for a couple more minutes if you're all right with it. Erik, the question that I asked the other day on the show as we kind of got ready to come to an end is like, what's the longest distance phone call you've connected with somewhere in the world? Like who's the longest distance that you've called? And if you have it, who could you call today to just check on them? Not necessarily right in your back pocket or your neighborhood, but like you could just check on them.
The longest has been India.
Okay.
And that was about 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Friend of mine from San Diego, now in India, to go check on his parents and be there. And he had a while. It was a face. I was out hiking. It wasn't just a phone call. I was out hiking. We were FaceTiming together, and he was in India in quarantine. And I was out hiking around. We talked for about 45 minutes.
How's he doing?
He's doing. It was a wild journey. He got to India. And spent like 7 hours going through, all the immigration stuff with people all around him. So then he had 2 weeks of quarantine, which they really follow up. Like they come to your house to make sure you're behaving. And then he got a cough and a temperature, and his sister's a doctor. So then they had to like put him into the quarantine ward at the hospital. And he's like, I don't think I have it, but I'm surely going to get it now. He got tested, didn't have it. Then he got 2 more weeks of quarantine. But now I just sent him a text yesterday. I said, "How you doing, man?" He's like, "I'm out of quarantine. Life is good." So that's been my longest one the longest distance who I've checked up on.
I appreciate it. Thank you for doing that. Peter?
Yeah. So mine is a buddy of mine was in South Africa on a safari when all of the shelter in place orders started going down. He lives here in Colorado. So I reached out to him, and he also has a hair salon in town. So they had some things that they needed to get done, and he wasn't here. So he asked for some help with that. He was having an amazing time on the safari, but was a little worried about everything that was going on back home.
Well, you guys, I just want to say thank you. Appreciate it. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep being the go-givers and helping to lead teams. And, Erik, I love the dynamics of you saying to your guy, hey, man, we're just going to focus on one thing, right? Because it's hard to focus on everything. But if you focus on the one thing and you lead from that point, everything gets better. And Peter, brother, I love you. I appreciate you. I'm grateful to add you to what we're doing. Total separate thing. 75 Hard has been really a big gift. My dog, I did not take on a walk this morning. I ended up meeting up with 2 of my buddies. and we kept our distance. And I came back and Amber looked at me and goes, "Your dog was basically," her words weren't this, but it was basically, "Your dog was pissed that you didn't take it with you this morning." He was so frustrated. So, hey, keep doing what you got to do. I love on you guys. I really, really do value and appreciate you both giving me an hour of your time, and we'll get the show live for everybody. But hey, on behalf of Chandler Bolt, Erik Van Horn, Peter Lynch, my name is Tony Grebmeier. Show brought to you today by ShipOffers Networking Remote 2020. We've got a dynamic show coming up for you tomorrow. We don't want you to miss out. Aaron Stokes, Shop Fix, and runs a bunch of shops talking about, helping cars get back on the road during difficult times. Peter Estevez, an investor, a businessman, has an oil refinery down in Mexico. Everything that's going on with that's going to be an interesting dynamic. And then Brad Waymert from Easy Pay Direct, really talking about merchants and what's going on there. So it's going to be a great show. He's got a cool mohawk, so he'll be rocking that tomorrow. No matter what you do today, no matter where you go, choose to make today the absolute best day of your life.
Thanks for listening to the Networking Remote. Remember, you are not alone. Stay connected